Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to be continuing this week's theme of short songs. We look at two songs from a band, and both songs must be under 3 minutes each. Today, we're going to be checking out Black Midi, all lowercase. This is a band that we looked at in one of the recent live streams. I think it might have been May or June, and I completely adored what they were going for. It is this fantastical, fun, high level musicianship playing, and I've been meaning to dive into them and check out more, and I just haven't yet. So I'm glad we get to check them out during this week, even if the songs are a bit on the shorter side. So this first one is called Marlene Dietrich. I don't know. Let's dig into this and see what's going on.
Under soft lights with a take back face, our soft spoken queen takes her place on the stage. As the big curtains open, the last troops running quick for the one and only Marlene Dietrich. She whispers demurely from the Blue Angel, the song we all know, the one
Love that bass line.
that we'd pay for, fills the hall tight and pulls at our hearts and puts in her place the girl she once was in that suit of 30.
Yeah, I got that wood block there in the background.
Soundtrack by disapproving commentary and my shuddering neighbor
Got a
turns and
cello going on.
While a kiss on the lips may
And a violin.
make a frog a prince. An orgasm renders any queen a witch. Metamorphosis exists. Damn all us idiots, damn us till death. Relentless
It's really interesting how densely layered it is now.
of rivers and roads that defy all sense, but her hands loose on all, and her voice brings you youth. Her cheeks cradle the holy breath, the pump, the lungs of her magnificent. And she beats the heart of her magnificent. And she walks the stage with her magnificent. And she makes us
Really interesting psychedelic element going on there. Gives it this dreamlike feeling. Alright, oddly, not what I was expecting, not what I remember. um thinking maybe it's the wrong band, but this dude right here says Black Midi on it. That's the singer I remember. That was interesting. So we have some elements in here that are very reminiscent of like lounge music. And but it's interesting because of the way that it ends up not being lounge music, and I think that is my huge takeaway with this song. There's a lot of density in here. I'm sure there's a lot of really cool chordal or melodic harmonic ideas, uh, compounding and creating some really cool stuff that I could talk about if I had noticed it, if I had really heard it. But the song has a lot going on, and the mix is not exactly kind to each individual element. And I think it's done on purpose to create this overwhelming wall of sound without really getting into that wall of sound mix where nothing can be heard on its own. I think this is sort of a middle ground that alludes to that kind of stuff like we see in post metal and even black metal, where none of the instruments really have their own unique identifiable sounds. This sort of toes the line between that and an exceptionally clean mix where I can kind of hear everything, but there's also so much going on and they're blending together just ever so slightly that it's really difficult to hear where one begins and one ends. And it didn't start that way, and I think the evolution of the song metamorphosizing. I don't know why I can't say that word. Undergoing a metamorphosis from the beginning to the end is what intrigues me the most here. It starts out feeling very much like any sort of, big band kind of loungy, uh, like a casual jazz uh, track. Anything that you would, kind of typically associate, at least I associate it with Las Vegas, the kind of show tunes that you would listen there. We have the piano, I think, was at the beginning. The drums were at the piano. I mean, the drums were at the beginning. And then we have that very theatrical voice. All of it kind of coming together to create that smooth jazz kind of sound. Loungy stuff. And slowly, new elements get incorporated in. We then get a cello, and then a violin, and then trumpets, I think. I heard another brass, could have been a French horn, could have been a trombone playing a little higher up in its range. And then we get these wide, sweeping, psychedelic, dreamlike synth pads that pan from left to right. And I'm sure there are a few more instruments that, again, I just missed because of the sheer density of the music. And I was trying to listen in on the lyrics, given that the beginning was so sparse with musical elements. I figured I'd check out what the song was about. And quickly I found one. I really didn't have that affordance after all. The song quickly became dense, introducing new elements constantly. But two, the vocals quickly got drowned out as well. So even if I wanted to pay attention to them, I was still going to have some difficulty understanding what was being sung with so much else going on around it and sort of drowning it out both in the mix and in volume in some cases. And I think that's what I find most fascinating about it. I don't really have anything strong analysis wise to share about it. I definitely would need another listen, another go. But I'm kind of blown away at how the song starts with a very typical, stereotypical lounge feel to it and ends up sort of moving into like a proggy, I don't even know, proggy atmospheric dreamlike state that's completely overbearing in its instrumentation and number of key lines. I don't want to call them melody lines. I don't think everybody was doing melody, but everybody had a very specific, important role to play that wasn't necessarily just foundational. We had melody lines, we had harmony lines, we had counterpoint lines, we had atmospheric lines. I think I said atmosphere already. Yeah, just kind of all over the place though. And it, double take, again, this is not what I was expecting from Black Midi, and maybe I'm just remembering it wrong. But let's dive into the second track. This one's called Hogwash and Balderdash. Nope, Hogwash and Balderdash. Can't read today. All right, let's see what's going on in this one. Some interesting microtonality in there.
Hogwash and Balderdash, chickens from the pen, coming down the rivers of
Anyone else
Salafast.
getting heavy Primus vibes here?
On zero snaps, I'm checking every angle, every foliage gap. I can't keep a speed, the sun is too much. Oh, boy, I said it, you just lost a touch. This hogwash he stood, and he licked fingers clean.
More dreamlike elements though. Not sure if coincidence or part of their DNA. I know both of these songs come off the same album too. Yeah, I'm loving the string texture off on the right.
Hogwash and Balderdash, chickens from the pen, surveying the beaches of Salafast.
What instrument was added there? Kind of like a kazoo. Yeah. Once again, though, with this overbearing mix and just density in general. Yeah, wow, that was something a little closer to what I was expecting, but still something that's very different. Just overall, just really doing some interesting things there. So, yeah, I'm just trying to collect my thoughts here. That first song, I barely had anything to talk about. I felt in the second one, I completely overwhelmed. They really don't do things halfway, do they? So this one I mentioned has a very big Primus feel to it. At least I get that. The vocalist seems to have changed his voice a little bit. He doesn't have. He's still using that lower register, the very wide, singing from the back of his mouth rather than the front. You're really getting that wide, deep sound. But he kind of gave up the flair and theatrics of the lounge singing for something a little more loose. I don't know, more casual, I guess you could call it. And that paired with heavy chaotic bass work and constantly changing musical ideas. I mean, we go from that driving drum and bass to a bar of sort of atonal, not atonal, maybe atonal, chromatic, I guess would be a way of saying, harmonized guitar run that doesn't necessarily line up as far as notes go. They're kind of picking and choosing what distances between the two notes are. Sometimes being a little bit more consonant than others, sometimes being more dissonant. Just really creating a lot of interesting flavors there, and running into pure chaos in some situations with just an overwhelming amount of instruments before cycling back to that drum and bass and then using the guitar run to transition back into the larger, fuller instrument set. And we sort of do this a couple of times before ending the song on a gigantic crescendo that I assume leads into the next track. But, or maybe it doesn't. With these guys, I don't know. They don't necessarily abide by any, typical rules. So I could easily see them just ending on this large crescendo, and the next song has nothing to do with it. The next song probably even starts quiet. Once again, though, once again, we see this strong element of overbearingness. Too many things happening. Completely, utterly dense song. By the end of the track, there is so much going on, much like with the Marlene track. It starts out rather sparse, one instrument, one drum, one vocalist, and ends with at least, I don't know, seven, eight, nine voices, all doing their own thing. None of them are really, layering up or hiding themselves. They're all prominent in the mix. They all have their own things, their own, musical lines, musical passages going on. Sometimes they're harmonious with others. That could be in tonality, or it could be, playing off of ideas, having some sort of synergy rhythmically or musically. Some of them are just completely doing their own thing. Seems completely divorced from the song. Could be, a line from another song. And if someone told me that, I probably would not bat an eye, because some of the lines were very, very far divorced from the thematic elements that were presented before it. And in that sense, there is a strong lineage between these two songs. However, in effect, they really could not be any further apart. We have a lounge track and a bass heavy rock track, and the atmospheres between them, the feelings of, the emotional feelings that are kind of tied to the atmospheres they're using, even something as simple as rhythmic and tempo feels, just completely different between these two songs. There's very little things that are happening individually within the music that I would say tie these two together. That if someone told me they were different bands, I would probably just be like, okay, yeah, that sounds about right. It really is the thematic compositional choices that tie these two together, that showcase some of what Black MIDI is all about. And I'm sure if I checked out the rest of the songs on this album, I would find even more things that they do that are unique to that song that really don't show up in any other. But I would also wager that we see a lot of similarities in the song structure, starting simple and ending chaotic. Usually, I would wager that we saw a lot of complexity and depth, and not necessarily done so in a way to create more coherency, but done so in a way to just create more depth. As we saw in these two songs, by the end of them, they are extremely chaotic. The extra voices and lines do not necessarily create a more cohesive song, but they do create more song. And I think that's an interesting way to go about writing music, especially if this is what they do. I don't know if I was just given two songs with similar compositional ideas, or if the whole album is like this, but I could see it becoming a kind of gimmicky after a while. I think it's interesting in a vacuum. Even these two songs back to back, I'm finding it interesting to see how they've applied it to two very different genres. But I don't know if I would want to listen to a whole album of just this concept of let's start with something generic and let's push it to excess. But I do appreciate that it is a very, very cool concept, and it is an exercise that I would not mind attempting. I'm actually a fan of that. A lot of the stuff, if you guys don't know, I run a composition jam every month over on the Discord, and the first day of the month, I suggest a theme. Right now, interestingly enough, we're doing short songs. You got to write something under 1 minute, and we all come together and we chat and workshop and help each other get through the any writer's block or any hurdles we've come to. We help with mixing and stuff like that. And at the end of the month, everybody submits the song that they've written that fits the theme, and we come together and provide some feedback and criticism as peers, to help us all grow as composers and or musicians. Some of us do record our own music. I use MIDI, and that's fine, MIDI and samples. But uh, for a few months, I started exploring a lot of the musical elements that I'm not too well versed in, stuff like dissonance and heavy music and harsh elements. And every time that I listen to something new, I'm like, yeah, I want to give that a shot. I want to incorporate that. And this is one of those things that intrigues me. It's something I want to give a shot in some music is abundance, and abundance to the point of unnecessary excess. And that is something that they just do so well. And it's a very fine line to walk. And like I said, I don't know if they do this in all their songs or if it's just this too, but it's not something you can easily pull off constantly because the line between excess and clutter is very fine. There is there's a very high percentage that either one of these songs could have ended, and I'm sure some people do end up listening to these songs with this takeaway, but that the endings are too much, that they could have been too dense or too chaotic and actually subtracted from the song rather than added to it and provided intrigue. And, like me at least, I want to dig in. I want to see what all these parts are and how they're working together. What's being interlocked together as far as synergies is, who's harmonizing with who's playing off of somebody else's, theme, who's providing variation to stuff, who's, working together rhythmically and emphasizing the same beats. I want to dig into all this because I think once I see the moving parts, it will make more sense. But there is definitely a version of this song in some parallel universe that is too much. Maybe enough things didn't work together and it was completely disjointed and it ruins the song. And like I said, the line between excess and clutter is very fine. And the fact that I think they walked it twice and stayed on the excess line without moving over into having too much. Uh, it's interesting that they've done it twice, and if they do it for every song on the album, and it's just done effectively without, pulling anything away from the song, that fascinates me. I mean, that would mean that they have a real knack for this, and there's just so many ways that this writing could go so wrong, and if they pull it off that many times, it's just jaw dropping. But interestingly, I don't remember what song we checked out on the live stream, but it made me want to listen to more of them. This does not. I'm intrigued on an artistic level now, but as a casual listener, I would not necessarily pick up either one of these albums or either one of these songs. It seems to be more. I really don't like saying this word because of the negative connotations, but it seems to be gimmicky. There's a novelty factor to it, and I'm not sure my interest could be held past that. Like I mentioned, I like this idea of what if lounge but avant garde? What if Primus but avant garde? And I'm intrigued, much like these YouTube musicians who kind of make novelty music. Not saying that it's bad or that that's all they make, but a lot of the popular videos on the YouTube music side is sort of novelty stuff. Especially with the covers. What if we cover this song, but it's with coconuts or something? And that's kind of the vibe I'm getting here, which is not the vibe I got the first time I heard them. So, I wonder if it's just the selection I got or whatever, but um, I figured I would just mention that. I'm sure there's other songs that would draw me in. Maybe if I check out whatever album that one song came off of that we checked out in the live stream, I'd have a different opinion. But yeah, right now, these two songs do not sell this album for me in any way other than looking at it artistically and sort of the interest of how far they can push this concept, which the idea of pushing things to the excess seems to be in their wheelhouse, so I'm sure they can do it just fine. but I still wonder, just how far this idea could go. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Black Midis, Marlene Dietrich, and Hogwash and Balderdash. Those are my thoughts, though. I just said those are my thoughts. That's where you guys come in, though. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed these or not. Let me know if I'm missing the point, if you have a different angle that you take with these. I know there's a couple of Black MIDI fans in the community. And, like I said, I did enjoy that first. I really wish I knew what it was called so I could just stop saying that song I listened to. But, if you're fans of at least, these two songs or maybe more on this album that are similar to it, give me your perspective. I'm always looking for different ways to look at music, different angles to see them from. Mine is not definitive in any way, shape, or form. I just give you my angle when I listen to music. I'm always open to more perspectives. When you're done commenting, you're going to head up to the description box. There is a link in there for Linktree, which is a very nifty place that houses all of the links for stuff adjacent to the channel in a nice menu with icons and buttons. If you wanted to submit a special selection, follow me on Twitter, support us through Patreon, or join the Discord community. That's all there and more. Above the description box, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC with 2 videos. We'll have the next short songs video, and then after that, at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time, we will have the next special selection. All right, until next time, Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.